Hey everyone, welcome to FreightWaves Live at Home. My name is Trey Griggs. I'm with Lean Solutions Group, and I'm excited to be having this fireside chat today with my good friend Dan Kopp of ITG Transportation Services. Today we're going to be talking about navigating uncharted territory in the transportation industry. Dan, thanks so much for joining today.
Happy to do it, Trey.
Well, you of all people know what it's like to navigate uncharted territory, to be in some waters you're not familiar with. You recently became the CEO at ITG Transportation. How's that transition going?
Yeah, I took over on January 1st of 2020, and so ours is a family business. I've been working with my dad for years, and we'd grown the company pretty significantly over the past few years. And January 1, 2020 seemed the right time to kick off the transition without a clue about what was coming. And so we had just come out of the ups and downs of the trade war, and so it really impacted the international freight quite a bit. And so we thought, all right, 2020 is a great year for us to smooth things out. Hopefully, nothing big gets in the way. And a couple months later, we were in the process of shutting it all down, sending everybody home. So it was a quick learning curve. And
So
where
you
I
jinxed it, is what you're saying, real quick. Like you actually said, let's smooth things out, make everything go great, and then here we go.
Oh, Trey, no joke. My first purchase as CEO of the company for 2020 was a membership to the United Club, figuring I would be spending so much time at the airport, and I decided to treat myself, and that card quickly collected dust.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, what are some of the things that you learned going through the pandemic? We'll just talk about leadership just a little bit. Moving into a new role within the same company, same industry, but definitely a new role. What are some of those lessons you learned right away about navigating uncharted territory?
So for us, if we look at the core values of ITG, the first one is that we're a family business. I mean, not only family and ownership, but we want to make sure we treat our folks like family. We get together, we have great events, we have a good social time, we really get to know our employees, and that disappeared immediately. And so it was then learning to use technology to maintain personal relationships with the staff. And so we would have monthly conversations with the entirety of the company, bring them in, talk about where we were. We actually would have conversations about how things looked on the P&L. I mean, because if there were, as the pandemic wore on at the first early months, there were changes we had to make as a company, decisions we had to make, and I want to make sure that the staff was well aware of why we were doing this. And so we would basically open up the P&L to the company and have a conversation about where our expenses were high, where we were low, what we were looking and projecting. And I think that was hopefully good for the staff. I mean, the feedback was good as far as the information. And then what we did was pivoted over to, rather than doing large company meetings, we do one-on-ones. And so I try to schedule 5 to 6 one-on-ones with staff. And so we've got a group of 130. And so I've almost made my way through the list of all of ITG just to check on people, find out what they need, how we can be helpful, how they're feeling. We have a tremendous HR department here at ITG who keeps an eye on folks. But to really sit down and know what they're experiencing has made a lot of difference in terms of the relationship with the staff and where we've gone this year.
Had you ever opened up your P&L to your company, to your entire staff before? And was there kind of some nervous energy about doing that?
There was. I mean, we're a private company, so we didn't necessarily have to do this, but I think that we wanted to get buy-in from the organization for the direction that we were going, and also to help decision-making process internally. So we would talk to we'd say, it's challenging to make a dollar. You can see what it is at ITG we have to do to make a dollar, and what decisions impact that dollar, right? If we take a loss, or if we find a carrier who's a little more expensive, or try to buy down, so there were a lot of things we put in place. It wasn't about um, you know impressing upon them the P&L. It was just a function of the health of the organization, so they can see how we're doing and they can take ownership in the direction that we're going, and see the ups and see the downs, and that the decisions that are coming down from management are based on numbers, not just based on that there's some transparency in that process.
So you opened up your P&L, which was probably a little nerve-wracking. You started
Mhm.
doing more one-on-one meetings. You started using technology that you hadn't used before. I'm sure there were some other things that you'd done for the first time. What are some things that you did that are probably going to last, that you're going to continue long after? Maybe some silver linings of all of this that are making your company better.
So I think that we have even prior to the pandemic, we were actually sort of well situated for this. We had as we grew quickly from 2013 to 2018, and we actually set up an environment so we could allow staff to work from home a couple days a week. And in fact, we would actually shut down all of our offices on Friday. So we called that the Friday Initiative. So people would rotate in, rotate out, and then we shut it down. And so as offices are talking about what a return to normal looks like, and we already have that model already in place. That, hey, you know what, we've been very successful with people working remotely. We have our staff is accountable, and they're showing that they can handle significant volumes without being in the office. But I think that bringing them back is going to be important. And so I think it's looking at saying, okay, we've proven that we can do this without being together, and just bringing people back. Yeah, let me hold on. So your question was, what's going to stay from the pandemic?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
What are some new things that are kind of silver linings that are actually going to stick around?
Yeah. Okay. So the silver lining is that we'll anticipate sticking around. One, I think we have a whole lot more communication as a group, formal communication. We'd get the team together, get opinions, do surveys, get feedback from the staff. One of the things that I always like to say during meetings is that if you don't tell me what's going on, I may never know, right? So whether it be personal, whether it be business, I'm a terrible mind reader in person. But I think I'm even worse remotely. And so the direct staff engagement, let's get their feedback, whether it be in small groups, whether it be one-on-one, whether it be surveys, and we've acted on a lot of that. And not everything we're going to be able to implement or move forward, but I think we've been able to really get feedback from the team that has helped us navigate in the past over the past year. And a lot of some of our best ideas have come from desk level operators because they're the ones on the ground. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have gotten that feedback if we didn't actually ask for it because we're not in person.
Yeah, so it sounds like obviously the uncharted waters of COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic has caused companies like yours to do things differently. It sounds like there's a lot of really positives that came out of that. And I want to ask you about our industry in general now, transportation, and kind of move
Sure.
into that just a little bit because that's where you live every day. You
Mhm.
guys, really specialize in ocean cargo and drayage and almost not the beginning of the supply chain, but pretty close to the beginning of the supply chain, especially when it comes to exports and imports
Sure.
and products being moved all across the world. So one question I want to ask you, and I want you to think about it for a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you a second question is, I want you to tell us in a minute, what are some of the biggest kind of shocks that you've experienced in this marketplace versus others? So think about that one for a minute while we talk about a little bit about what you see on the ocean cargo side and the current state, ports that are being delayed. Obviously, the Suez Canal issue happened, shelves being just trying to be replenished because they just got wiped out at the beginning, and the restocking that's going on. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from your vantage point when it comes to ocean cargo and drayage in our industry.
Sure. So to answer your first question, the biggest shock as I sit down and talk to our team is the number of times that they're all having to touch a file over the past couple of years or over the past years. Because what we're seeing is, on the export side, changes in scheduling, earliest return dates are changing. You can't get appointments to get back into terminals. So what otherwise would be maybe you touch a file 4 or 5 times over the course of his life, they're jumping in, especially on the export side, 10, 15 times that they're actually having to do something because the schedule changes or because of, freight's not available. There's no equipment. There's only a finite number of chassis on the planet, right? So you can bring in all the containers you want, but if there's not a chassis to put it on, that box is going to sit. And so what we found is that, even if our volumes were to stay exactly the same, the amount of work that's required for each file has grown significantly. And so compound that then with increasing volumes, our operators are doing a phenomenal job, but are having to just do significantly more work on files that otherwise would be fairly simple. And
Do you
then,
think that's, let me touch on that for just a minute. Do you think
yeah.
that that is more industry wide or worldwide? Because it's, seems like all the things that we kind of took for granted, the things that just seem to flow really smoothly, aren't flowing as smoothly anymore. We've heard some of the investors like Warren Buffett and some of the others say the supply chain is an absolute mess right now. I mean, is that something that you think everybody in the industry is dealing with? And what's the best way to handle that when your process really gets, thrown upside down?
So I think that I don't know that there's anybody I've talked to in the industry that said they're going through smooth sailing right now. I mean, whether it be driver shortages, whether it be increased rates, whether we spent a period of time where we were challenged by freight by rates that we'd give it to customers when volumes were so low, right? And everybody's begging to get freight, so you quote this stuff pretty low, and then all of a sudden it comes in the middle of middle of a surge, and you say, well, I got to try to honor the rate. I got to. Everybody's got challenges left and right, right? And so as we look at trying to navigate the process and the things we're doing, I think the one thing we need that we press upon our staff is honesty. I mean, you make sure you have to deliver the honest message to the customer about what's going on, why it's happening. Educate your customers, because if we can educate your customers about what's going on, they will also educate their customers. We're fortunate in that now there's more literature than ever about what's going on in the international supply chain. Whether it's plug for FreightWaves, but they've got great information that we've been able to share with customers. So it's almost a rarity when we can come across someone who's unaware of what's going on. It doesn't change the frustration, but I think if you can have, honestly educate your customers about what's going on, provide backup as to why, and then just be patient as they get feedback from their customers and, they educate all the way through the process. It simplifies it a little bit, but it's still a challenge for everyone everywhere.
So Dan, you spend most of your time, your company, you guys spend most of your time in the ocean cargo and transit times across the seas, as well as drayage. What are some of the biggest challenges that you experience on a day-to-day basis being in that part of the supply chain?
There are a lot of delays, Trey. I mean, as we talk to our carriers, we talk to our customers. We get notifications all the time, whether it's an inability for a carrier to get an appointment to go into a terminal to even get a container, or to return a loaded container, to return an empty. The backlogs are just crazy. I mean, we have just a couple of days ago, we had a carrier send us a picture of him waiting in line at the NS Landers in Chicago. 10 blocks long was a line. They're waiting in line for 5 hours just to return a container. And so that's normally an area you don't expect that in certain ports. Everybody knows that New Jersey's challenging right now. Long Beach has had struggles, but when you start getting some of the inland rails backed up in markets like Chicago, it can really cause a mess for everybody. And so then if you're looking at that carrier who is spending 5 hours in line to return a box, that's going to mess up their hours available for tomorrow. That's going to change. They're not going to be able to pull something that they otherwise have got schedules, and there's a ripple effect downstream. And so to recover from that, normally if there's a carrier drops a load or has to give one back to you, there's somebody else out there, right, that you can go give it to. But we provide our customers with availability reports on a daily basis, and some markets we're looking weeks out. And so the recovery process of a missed load is incredibly challenging right now. And I think that is probably the biggest hurdle our operators are coming across.
What's the current backlog, we see these ships that are out at anchor and are just waiting to get into the port. And as you said, sometimes that doesn't even matter, because if there aren't chassis to move the boxes, it doesn't matter if they get into port or not. I mean, what is the overall delay? Like, what would you say would kind of be the average delay of products actually getting over here from when they normally would be? Are we a month delayed? Are we 3 months delayed? 6 months delayed? What's your best assessment based on what you've seen?
That's a great question, and I would actually have to probably answer that one. Push that off to someone who actually does vessel scheduling. But what I'll tell you is that if we look at our market nationally, and if we're to say, okay, if a customer comes to us, say on average, if we send you a work order today, it could be a week or two before we have availability to cover something. And so what we're finding is that carriers, our customers on the freight forwarding side, are sending orders earlier and earlier and earlier on the import side. And then what they're doing is they're looking at our availability report saying, okay, here's your student's availability for an export out of Memphis, for example. Well, then they'll book their ocean freight based on the trucking availability. So they know they can get that box loaded and returned. But then again, there's no guarantee that that vessel schedule holds. And so you'll see, that presenting another challenge. But I think that, it's weeks in some markets before you can find an available truck.
Wow, that's it's unbelievable to think about the ripple effect that's happening in that regard and what that means for someone in your position who's really kind of trying to navigate and work through all of these different channels to make sure that your customers are satisfied and getting what they need when they need it. I think about the restocking of shelves. I think about the home prices right now, how wood has just gone through the roof, and how short we are on wood and things like that. I'm not sure when the end is in sight. If you were trying to predict something, I'm going to put you on the spot too much, but if you're trying to predict when things kind of come back to normal, I think we started this at the pandemic. Like I remember thinking, okay, in 3 months we should be good, 6 months we should be good. I had a friend say it's going to be more than a year, and he was right on. What are your thoughts on this when you look at the market and the shape that it's in, the supply chain? What's your best guess on when this is going to resemble, late 2019, for example?
So I would actually, I don't know that I wanted to get back to the late 2019 because that was sort of the midst of the trade war. So let's go to like a 2018 maybe, when we were, but I think that we'll be this busy through 2021. This will go into 2022 because I mean we're looking at, we're in May right now. We're a couple months out from what is then traditionally peak season in ocean freight. But not only do we have those increased volumes now, the backlogs, there's pent up freight in overseas that still needs to make its way over that's delayed. But now there's also been 1.9 trillion dollars unleashed on the U.S. economy most recently, and I think that once that spending starts, it's going to be. I don't want to say unmanageable, but it's going to be it's going to continue like this for quite some time, and we're bullish on at least the rest of the year on our side.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing as well. I think, I do a poll every Friday with some people in the industry just talking about the status of that. And most people are putting it into 2022, just like you are. So I would imagine that, rates aren't going to come down, capacity is not going to loosen, none of that's going to really change probably until 2022. And who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
No, but as a result, we are, we're actively hiring. I think that, we want to make sure that we say yes to as many opportunities as we responsibly can, but we also don't want to overwhelm our staff. I mean, they're doing phenomenal work, putting in extra hours, and so we want to make sure we give them the resources we possibly can. So whether it's a combination of, strategic domestic hiring, staff augmentation with our friends over at Lean, or automation where we can apply that. I think that three-headed approach is our direction for the rest of the year, and we're doing that because again we're confident that we'll be busy for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a really good point about how to staff for this because I think when the pandemic started, there was a question about should we keep hiring? Should we pause? Should we let some people go? What's this going to be like moving forward? And I think it's pretty easy to say that, like we said, this isn't going to slow down for a while. And so how does that impact your staffing needs and what that looks like moving forward? I think that, like you said earlier, the more touch points that you have on one shipment, it just that alone requires more hands on deck. The more calls you need to make to find a truck now, because it's not easy to find capacity, requires more people in that regard. You guys have taken the approach, you're going to continue to grow and continue to hire. What's the risk in that? Is there a risk in hiring too much right now, or do you feel like this is a time where any company who's doing the right things is pretty much on a hiring spree?
I mean, there's always a risk, right? If you're hiring for an urgent need, you still want to make sure you're thorough in the people that you're bringing in, and we talk about it all the time. I mean, because we unfortunately have had to let people go over the past couple of years, and we don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we're overextended. So I think that we were a little bit. Hesitant at the beginning to find, to bring on more people, just because we weren't sure what this would look like. And then we quickly had to catch up. But we also want to make sure that we had the training infrastructure in place. I mean, it was one thing to send people to work remotely from home, but then to say we're going to spin up a class of 4 or 5 new people. Oh, and by the way, here you go, you get to train 4 people over Zoom. At the same time. So there are challenges with that, and our team's done phenomenally well. But I think that we have our hiring strategy then has really been to try to take off of our operators' desks rather than say, oh, we're going to spin up a brand new desk. Let's try to take things off of our operators' desks that allow them to allow our experts to handle more freight, and we've been successful in that process with our hiring.
Yeah, and certainly the challenges of training, onboarding virtually over Zoom, and doing all those things. We've experienced that as well, as you know. Of how do we bring on new clients when we can't even bring people to the office, or they can't come down to Columbia to visit, which is a very normal thing for what we're doing there. So we definitely understand that pain. Had to learn some new process in that as well, and again, appreciate customers like you that help us figure those things out and walk through that with us. So we definitely appreciate that. Speaking of virtual, we're still in virtual meetings like we are right now with FreightWaves Live at Home. There's a few more that are coming up soon that are virtual as well. But hopefully, with the future of freight, with F3 coming up in November, we can get back to seeing each other again. I honestly cannot wait to be back where we can shake hands and be with friends again. So I'm really looking forward to that, as I'm sure you are as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think when they announced that it was live, it wasn't a question of whether or not we were going to join that. We're going to jump at the opportunity to get back engaged and see folks.
Yeah, and I know that Craig's calling for like 12,000 of this thing, but I'm telling you, there's not that many hotel rooms in the area. So you better get your room quick. Make sure that you have a place to stay for this, because I imagine everybody who's been wanting to get together is going to be attending. It's going to be a great time. And I'm personally hoping for a band. I'm hoping for the F3 band, so we'll see what happens with that. But it's going to be a tremendous time together. But either way, excited to be with you, Dan, and to hear more about what you're doing. One last question for you. We didn't talk about the drayage side too much. Tell me some of the biggest impacts just on the drayage side, what you guys are doing to to mitigate some of those issues that you're experiencing on the drayage side of business.
Yeah, so we've allocated resources to simply identifying capacity. Right, we've got folks who all day long is their job number one is just get on the phone, not even to secure freight for that one, just identify where the capacity is and where it isn't, so we can make determinations based on markets. So we'll have the spreadsheet that runs. Say, okay, here's where we are in Memphis, and here's what we can do. There are scenarios where we might be able to cover sooner than our published availability, but it keeps us from spinning our wheels. Right, I think the one thing that our customers want is a definitive answer, yes or no. Can you do this? Yes or no? If yes, then yes, you're expected to do it. But I think they also appreciate the honesty of no, we don't have coverage for this. And I think by identifying that internally, we're spinning less wheels, calling the same people over and over who've already answered a question about their capacity. And so that was a big one. And then as well as we're working on integrations. Right. I mean, part of the biggest headache that our staff is identifying is just the emails back and forth. Right. And so if we can integrate with our carriers that we're working with, we can integrate with customers and then manage by exception. It's not perfect, but that is something that we've really worked hard to spin up in the past even a couple of years with tremendous success. And I think that's the future of where we're going to be going.
How much have you added to your staff percent-wise on that, just dedicated to carrier relationships, carrier capacity, and sourcing capacity? What's that change been?
So we've added, I'd say, 2 or 3 people whose pure responsibility is to find capacity in the market, and we're trying to find even more creative ways to get in touch with our carriers, right? I mean, they're insanely busy. Their job is to move the containers, not to answer our perpetual emails to tell us when the availability is. So we want to be creative, whether it be here's a survey, click this button, take this phone call, whatever it is. We're finding that per carrier, and so whether it's a combination of resources and creativity, we've been able to get a decent handle on capacity in the market.
Well, I'm sure that's only going to become more challenging over the next probably 6 to 8 months. But it sounds like you've got a good plan of attack to handle that. And really appreciate you being on today with us for this fireside chat at FreightWaves Live at Home, Dan. So thank you so much for your time. And for everyone else out there, stay tuned for more great fireside chats and great content at FreightWaves Live at Home.
Hey, thanks a lot, Trey.